Good evening. This is the meeting for the Housing Commission, December the 12th, 2024, and are ready to begin. We have 4 of our commissioners in attendance, so we can start. Thank you all. Can we have the roll call, please?
Absolutely. So I'm going to say your name. If you are here, please say present. Chair Cunningham,
Present.
Vice Chair Bolzay,
Present.
Commissioner Tasachar,
Present.
Commissioner He,
Present.
and Commissioner Das is running a little bit late, but he will be here later. From what I understand.
Thank you. Are there any postponements this evening?
No postponements for this evening.
Are there any oral communications?
There was one, we had an old communication, a phone call from someone who called about agendized items.
Mhm.
I can share that now or during that item, whenever you guys wish.
Okay, I think the oral communications are for people who are
Oh, I see.
and speaking at oral communications.
Sorry.
What you've talking about, I think,
Yeah.
is a written communication and it's
Okay.
for a action item. Right?
Sure.
Oral communications
Okay.
is for anything on that we might be responsible for,
Yeah.
but that's not on the agenda.
I see.
So that's what and look, we've got 2 people here, so I don't know, are we having oral communications?
Do you
from
guys,
either of
would you guys like to speak about anything to the commission that is not an agendized item for tonight?
No, I want to speak with regard to the 2025-2030 community development block grant.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
We'll have you speak then. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for being here. Okay, so then for written communications, you were saying that we received something on one of our agenda items?
That's right. We had one person call in. It was in relation to the anti-displacement policy.
Okay, and so that'll come up under the anti-displacement policy
Sure.
discussion?
I can let you guys know that we had this phone call now and tell you the contents, or we can save it for later. I can bring it up to discussion, whichever you prefer.
I think I would prefer if we do it at the time that we're talking about.
Sounds good.
That makes it a little easier.
Okay.
Okay, is there any old business this evening?
No, and this is a special meeting, so this would be strictly for the agenda items. Yeah.
Okay, great. So then we are here. It is 5:32 and we're ready to go to the agenda item 2, which is the Housing Commission schedule for the coming.
Excellent. So welcome, everyone. I'm Nikki. Now the coordinator for the city. I'll be running these presentations for tonight. As the chair said, there are 3 things on tonight's agenda. So actually first, there is actually approval of minutes. Could we do that one first?
Oh, isn't it funny? I jumped right past the
Yeah.
yellow highlighted piece. Okay, yes. Agenda item 1, the approval of the minutes. So for each of the commissioners, did you have any questions on the minutes this evening?
I actually, I had a question I forwarded to Nikki.
Okay, and
Just when we discuss what is called future agenda items.
Mhm.
If we can have a review of to which are accepted, which are not kind of thing. Because I somehow felt that there were more items discussed than what was there in the. But
so this is the time, this is
Yeah.
the right time to ask that. So
Yeah.
did you respond to his question?
I hadn't had a time yet because I didn't know what he was specifically referring to yet.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't jot down all the points. I did bring my notes from the previous meeting, but
Okay.
it doesn't seem to have all the points. I don't want to make it, not a gating issue.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh,
It could have been that I might have just missed it. So that's my apologies. I shouldn't do that. I also want to take this moment to introduce Lindsay Nelson. She's new at the city and she'll be helping taking notes for the meeting. So hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
So is this question one that doesn't need to be answered in order for you to approve the minutes for?
Yeah, because I don't have my own notes,
Okay.
in terms of what it is.
Okay. Okay, well then, I guess we can call the motion. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. Can you take the?
Absolutely. So when I call your name, please say aye, nay, or abstain. Chair Cunningham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bolzay,
Aye.
Commissioner Chart,
I
and Commissioner,
Aye.
and then Commissioner Doss is running late, so he'll be absent. So the motion carries 4-0. That's right.
Oh,
Perfect.
carries. I
Sorry.
just got told today that I can do that after every. Oh,
Yeah.
it's kind of
She got the
fun.
power of the gavel.
I love it. Okay.
Can I try? No.
No, the chair gets to.
Chair.
So sorry, so sorry.
To be there.
I have to be, yeah.
You have to be in the magic chair.
Right.
So volunteer in January, we're taking applications.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
You too can join.
And you have some spare time, so you'd like to,
Yeah, oh yeah, right. That's
we never see you at any of the upcoming events.
Oh my, that's true. Okay, so we will now do agenda item 2, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The
Excellent.
Housing Commission schedule.
Yes, so
So-
this next item is to set the schedule for next year, just, an administrative thing, because this is the last meeting of the year. Tentatively, we have March 27th, May 22nd, September 25th, and March 23rd. These are the regular meetings, right? We usually meet once per quarter. That's not gonna be the sum of all meetings, right? We could also have special meetings, just like today, when we have particular items that need to come up as of note. But this is just to kind of set our regular schedule. If you guys would like to take a look at this, and if you are okay with it, or you want to discuss it, there's actually, we can do this informally. Is there any date that doesn't work for you guys that you want to have changed?
Not this time.
Not at this time.
Not this time?
No.
E, what do you think?
No.
Any Gozen? Do these dates work for you?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, why don't we go ahead and take a vote on this and just have it,
Okay.
So moved.
Yes. So
So
moved.
would it
Do we have a
still be like
second?
5:30?
yes,
5:34.
hey, there will still be 5:30 for Thursday of the month in this meeting room.
Oh.
This is basically like.
Right, and I had talked with Nikki before, because I was talking about the election of the chair and the vice chair. Usually happens like January or February. And if we have a special meeting, we will elect the chair and vice chair at that meeting, but otherwise it'll wait until March.
Right.
Okay, so we moved and seconded, and so can you call the vote?
Sure. Do you have the movement second for this time? Can we get a movement second?
Motion so moved.
Second, and a second,
Okay.
second,
Those
okay,
are the-
moved and seconded,
Okay.
so count.
And then,
Vote.
when I call your name, please say I may or abstain.
Okay.
Chair Cunningham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bozak,
Aye.
Commissioner Heat,
Aye.
Commissioner Tatachar, and Commissioner Doss.
Yeah, so I'm just asking that this is the motion on this calendar.
Yes, that's it.
Got it.
Excellent.
Aye, okay.
Motion carries 5-0.
So carries. Okay,
Okay,
thank you. Welcome. Commissioner Dawes. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we'll move on to agenda item number 3. This is the 2025-2030 Community Development Block Consolidated Plan Outreach Presentation, CDBG, we will call it.
yes,
And the recommended action is to conduct, this is a public hearing, and to receive a presentation on the development of that plan. And so I wanted to just make a couple of notes. Please note that this is an action to receive the presentation. We will have further action in the spring to review it and to approve it at that time. Please hold your questions until after the presentation and limit questions to 1 or 2. Because of the fact that it's just receiving the report and later on we will approve it. Our next agenda item, number 4, requires our approval, so needs more of our attention and our time this evening. So, excuse me, we will have time for questions and comments from commissioners, then oral communications, and then to the commissioners to the follow-up. Okay, so presentation will be.
Yes. Thank you. So, right when I'm about to turn it over to our consultant Heidi Agler. She's with Root Policy. She's working with the city of Cupertino, right? To do development on, as Chair Cunningham said, the 2025-23 HUD consolidated plan. So each time when you guys come here, right, and you vote on an annual plan, you remember how I talk about how it's meeting the priorities of the consolidated plan. That's a long range plan that kind of determines the city's needs for the next 5 years looking into the future. A lot of research that goes into this, more than I can just do right on my own. But Heidi's got a whole team. She's here to talk to you guys about that process, what she's doing. But more importantly, also, she's also sharing kind of the outreach efforts, because it's not just what we get in, in our technical studies. Imagine what people say, when we talk to them about what are the priorities. And so there is, a lot of outreach going on right now. There's a survey. For the people who are here representing different organizations, thank you for attending. We are going to encourage you to share this survey with your clients and your staff, so we can get the best kind of data and the best kind of turnout, right, for our outreach. And because that helps us develop our plan, right, to include your responses and your priority needs. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now. And Heidi, I'm turning it over to you so you can share your screen right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Nikki. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah,
So, thank you for having me here tonight. As Nikki mentioned, I'm from a company called Root Policy Research. We are based in Denver, Colorado. I do this work all over the country, and I do a lot of work in Northern California, both with these types of consolidated plans as well as the housing elements. We have done a lot of the assessments of fair housing, or AFFHs, associated with elements in Northern California communities. I'm going to start by giving a brief background on the consolidated plan. I feel like that's really important for anybody who's attending the meeting to understand what this plan's about and sort of make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then I'm going to share some preliminary findings from the needs and market analysis. And I'll go ahead and go through the presentation, and then I can take questions if anybody has any questions toward the end. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the consolidated plan, as Nikki talked about just a moment ago, it's a document that's required by HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a 5-year plan. It's produced every 5 years, and you have to do it to receive funding from HUD. It uses a combination of data and community outreach to identify top needs in a city or a county or a state. And it also looks at gaps in supportive services. So we're in the throes of doing all of that research to inform the plan. The funds associated with the consolidated plan benefits low and moderate income populations. And you had talked about CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant. There's actually 4 funds that are associated with the consolidated plan. The last 2 on my screen, Emergency Solutions Grant and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. Those are managed by the City of San Jose, but they're distributed regionally. And for you all, the most important is CDBG. It's really a community development program, so not so much of a housing program, although you can do some housing services, including rental assistance, down payment assistance, supportive services. So 15% of the total grant can go toward nonprofits who provide services, a variety of services to low and moderate income populations. Other eligible activities are rehabilitation, both ownership and rental housing, and then community improvements. And those can be street and sidewalk improvements, lighting, helping to leverage the construction of community facilities and public infrastructure. The other fund that's loosely associated with this plan is the Home Investment Partnerships Program. It's a very complicated program, and it leverages the creation or acquisition and redevelopment of affordable housing. So we're in the throes of doing this plan for a number of jurisdictions, including yours. And I separated this slide into 2 parts, one being the first are participating jurisdictions. So these are the jurisdictions, the cities, as well as the county. They're doing their own plans, but the county brought everyone together to be able to do these together so that the individual jurisdictions weren't paying on their own to do these plans and you didn't have any coordination. So we're doing these for everyone listed there, in addition to urban county communities. And so those small communities that are listed at the bottom there, those fall under the county plan. And in that case, those communities get CDBG dollars directly from the county, but you get yours directly from HUD. So a question that may come to your mind is, what kind of dollars are we talking about here? Over time, CDBG and home have really decreased in terms of funding. It's associated with decreased federal budgets for housing and community development. So Cupertino doesn't get a lot of money, but depending on the way that you use it, it can really make a really big difference. You'll see that City of San Jose, just purely based on their size, they get the biggest chunk of money, and they get money for all 4 of the programs that I talked about. If you're curious about these dollars and how much funding the cities have received over time, I put the link to HUD's website that has historical data on CDBG and the other programs at the bottom of the slide here. So I wanted to make a pitch for the community engagement that we've been undertaking for the plan. We have a local firm called Community Planning Collaborative that's been helping us develop the plan, and they designed a really cool website called letstalkhousingscc.org. That website has been used in the past for all things related to housing, including the housing elements, and they repurposed it for the consolidated plan. So it has everything on it. It has a video that gives an introduction about the consolidated plan. It contains resources. It's also got the survey that we're running through the end of the year, and there's both the QR code and the link here. It's a pretty slick survey to take, and I encourage you to do it, to share it with your friends and family. We'd really like to get as many responses as possible because that survey helps us set priority needs. A bit of an update of what we've heard so far. We've had pretty good response from residents and cities in the county overall, as well as the unincorporated county. And we're separating the analysis right now. So we've done some preliminary work into North County and South County. Most of the responses that we've gotten have been from residents. So we have about 954 responses overall. This was as of, let's see, probably last week. So we've gotten some more since then. And then we have 76 stakeholders. So those are people who work in the field of housing and community development. One thing that's really important to us is who is responding to the survey. And you see here that the demographics are really the demographics of folks who we want to hear from. 12% of people who responded to the survey are what we called precariously housed. That means they're living with somebody, they're not on the lease, they're couch surfing, they may be living in a park, and maybe got the survey through a shelter, they're living in an RV or their car. And so we're able to, because we've got a good response from different types of people, to segment the responses. And so you can see how housing needs vary differently depending on the responses. We also have a really good share of folks who are making less than $100,000 annually. Pretty good diversity. We're capturing parents, including single parents, people with disabilities, as well as seniors. And this graphic here just gives you some preliminary results on community development priorities. So the survey asks folks to rank what, if they were in charge of the money, where would they put it? What would be priority needs? And affordable childcare, as well as services for people who are currently underhoused or unhoused, and mental health services really came up quite a bit in the survey, as well as in the stakeholder consultation, the workshops that we've held. Transportation's also come up quite a bit. And it's a little tough to use CDBG to address transportation needs, but I wanted to acknowledge that because that was a priority needs that folks told us about, as well as supportive services for special populations. I'm going to shift and share some data on the market analysis. So a big part of our research to date has been market analysis, and this is a required component of the consolidated plan. So you can think of this as a little bit different than what you see in the housing element. Your housing element is really a land use document that's focusing on the needs that you need to accomplish over the next 8 years. This is more of a focus on low to moderate income populations where there are gaps in the market. It's a bigger picture presentation of needs overall in the city. What we start with is, and this will all show up in the plan too, but I wanted to give you a preview of the analysis that we've done to date. We start with looking at housing price trends. And you see on the left, these are the home values and how they have risen really, really substantially since 2016. The typical home price, according to Zillow, is $2.82 million. So we step back and we say, well, what's the annual income required to afford that home? You'd have to earn $1 million a year to be able to buy the typical home in Cupertino. And that median household income that compares to a median household income of $230,000. So it's very, very hard to buy in Cupertino right now. It's also pretty hard to rent. The rent right now is $3,700 a month. That requires an annual income of about $150,000. But your renters, they're pretty rich. They do pretty well. So the rental market is a bit of a different story than the home buyer market. And part of that is renters have a hard time buying. So they're renting longer, and the rental market is accommodating those renter incomes. One of the kind of quirky things in working with the data, so we pulled down the latest data that we could actually 2 weeks ago to be able to prepare this. We wanted to get 2023 data in the plan, but the census doesn't give us incomes or home prices that are high enough for us to be able to do this kind of analysis like we typically could in markets that aren't as high cost. So you see here on the graph on the left, we started with looking at trends in median household income growth by tenure, meaning if you're a renter or you're an owner. We actually can't track the growth in median owner income because there's not a category for us that kind of segments that really, really high income owner bracket. But what you do see here is that in the green there on the left, between 2018 and 2023, the median renter household income increased by 38%. The median household income overall increased by 41%. But if you shift to the right, the graphic on the right, and you look at what's the income required to afford the typical home price, that shot up a lot higher than the actual increase in those median incomes. And the reason is that with interest rates going up, housing became very costly really fast. And when you have a very high median home price, that really adds to that monthly debt service. The other thing that we look at is called cost burden. And cost burden is when people pay more than 30% of their income in housing costs. Severe cost burden is when they pay more than 50%. We really worry about people who are severely cost burdened because they're typically at risk of foreclosure or eviction. You'll see in Cupertino between 2018 and 2023, for both renter and owner households, the share of people who are experiencing burden dropped. And that's generally a good thing if you're providing affordable housing. But in a market like yours that is really expensive, when we see cost burden drop pretty significantly, it tells us that people have left the market. So they couldn't afford to rent or to buy, they moved somewhere else, and then higher income people came in, absorbed their units, they could afford the rent and the mortgage, and so they were not cost burden, and so the share of people who are cost burden drops. The other things that you'll see in the consolidated plan are what we call gaps analyses. And a gaps analysis, the way that we conduct it is we look at household income. So you see that on the left side, income ranges. We calculate the maximum affordable gross rent. We look at the share of renter households that fall in that income category. We compare them to the number of rental units that are affordable, and then we calculate the gap. So the gap is when there are too few units to accommodate the number of households. In your market, the gap doesn't go away until renters are making $100,000 or more. I typically see a gap go away at about $50,000 or $75,000. So it's pretty hard for any renter household making less than $100,000 to be able to find an affordable unit unless they can get into like a deed restricted or affordable unit. I was on a stakeholder focus group earlier this week, and we had a housing provider talk about some housing that they had developed in Fremont, which is sort of out of the county, right? But not too far off. And they had a really interesting statistic. They had just done a lottery for 100 units, 100 affordable rental units, and they got 10,000 applications. So that's a pretty stark example of how tight the market is and how hard it is to be able to find housing. The other question that we ask is how hard is it for a renter to be able to buy? We do a purchase gaps calculation, and here we're comparing the share of renter households by income with the share of affordable homes to be able to accommodate them. You see here that 61% of your renters are making $150,000 or more. They have 98% of homes to be able to choose from. But for those who are making less than 150,000, the market is really, really limited. They only have 2% of the supply to be able to afford, or that they could afford. So really, really hard if you're making less than 150,000 to be able to find something to buy. With that, I'll go ahead and take questions. I don't know, Nikki, if you want to just have people like raise their hand, or you could call on them, and I can leave the presentation up for a minute in case people have questions about the data.
Right, so this is the time that we would open it up for questions. We have information ones for Heidi first, right?
Okay, thank you. And so we'll open it up first to the commissioners to ask questions, and then we will have the public make their questions. You have any questions?
Could you get a copy of this presentation?
Yeah, Heidi, I can share this with the commissioners.
I have a question. So, yeah, I think we showed a lot of data, and that's very nice data. But over the 3 or 4 slides, I think the main idea is that how costly it is in Cupertino and how people are struggling. And I think most of us already know the bigger picture. So what is the key takeaway of these 4 or 5 slides? Because I think the CDB funds have got to do with moderate income housing or low income housing, how the state is trying to pitch in effort or pitch in money, and the city is helping out implement something with that money. But showing that costly cities are even more costlier and people are struggling, is there a correlation that we are trying to draw here?
Yeah, when you look at the amount of CDBG that you get relative to those needs, like if you took a look at your median home price, which is well over 2 million, and your CDBG is under 200,000, that quickly tells me that down payment assistance is not really something that I would fund, because you maybe get one person in a house if you're lucky. So when you think about the best use for CDBG, it would be, I would say, in housing stability and focusing on very low income people and helping keep them in housing, as well as providing services. You have a number of great organizations in the city and in the county that are doing a lot to make sure that people who are essential workforce, low to moderate income workers, are being housing stable. So they're able to find housing. You have a lot of really good housing providers who are building affordable housing. The problem, though, is that they can, their cost to be able to develop housing is fixed, but incomes, as I showed, are not really tracking, particularly for low-income people who are cost burdened. Their incomes aren't tracking with the cost of housing, and so helping nonprofits be able to subsidize pretty deeply to get workforce into housing would be certainly a priority need. We have more. Oh, sorry.
We'd like to have a follow-on question to that.
Sure.
Angan?
Yeah, so my follow-up question was that you brought up the very important point that we are getting less than 200,000. So if you can flash that slide, what I do remember is that San Jose is a big city, we know all that, and it will obviously get a lot more money. But if you see Sunnyvale and Mountain View is like 3 times, Sunnyvale is like 5 times. What are the main things that make these happen? Is it that they use CDB funds really well and the state got encouraged to give them even more? Or is it something that I'm missing?
Oh, you mean why are they getting so much more?
Yeah, you see that big difference between Sunnyvale and Cupertino
Yeah,
compared to
it is. Oh, go ahead.
compared to the size difference between the 2 cities. It doesn't match up.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the CDBG formula for a number of years. It's population based. It's also based on income and poverty. So if you are a higher income community and you don't have as many low income people, you won't get as much CDBG.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, right now, we actually are artificially low because we had a voluntary grant reduction in order to pay back funds to the federal government on a project that had an improper environmental review done maybe like 10 years ago. So the actual number that we should be expecting annually for the next one is around 300.
Around 300? Okay, my point is that if you are expecting 200 or 300, the home prices, median price being close to 3 now, I don't think it makes any sense to help low income or moderate income people to buy houses here. You'll probably exhaust your funds in one buy. So should we take a step back and think about how to use that money a little differently, or?
Excuse me if I might, I thought I remembered Heidi saying that she did not recommend that we use it to buy.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you may remember from having done the CDBG plans heretofore, that that's not what we do. That
Correct.
we use the amount of funds we have to help the people do things that are within that range of funds. But a good question, but I think Heidi did answer that earlier. So I was going to say, I was going to say, if I might, that this is, as I said, something that we will be looking at in the spring with more detail. So rather than, if you don't mind, Commissioner
I'm done.
Doss, to allow other people to maybe
Of
ask the
course.
question, and then we will want to let the public.
So my question is that, I remember you mentioned, that not all categories of the funds are, suitable, like what is being done by San Jose in terms of CDBG, home, ESG and HOPWA. So, could you give us a idea as to why would it not be suitable for Cupertino, the other categories?
Oh, so he's asking why we don't receive home ESG or.
Oh, sure. Sorry. ESG and HOPWA are determined by the size of the population with HIV/AIDS and also the size of the population that is homeless. And those dollars are regionally distributed. So HUD is going to give those to the largest city within a region, and then they distribute. Home is also formula-based, much like CDBG. Typically, communities have more success applying for, so a developer, if you don't get home directly, a developer could apply for home funds from the county or from the state. And oftentimes it's advantageous for a community like of your size not to get home, because a developer would have more success through that application process with the county or the state who has a larger home allocation.
So in summary, we actually do kind of, in a way, receive those funds. It's just, it makes more sense to distribute them regionally, because for those kinds of efforts, it's really expensive, right, to build affordable housing. So City of Cupertino, we have an agreement with the County of Santa Clara where we basically all pool our money together. So developers can just apply to them once at one spot to get that money. So we do receive home, we just give it to them and then they manage it for us. And then City of San Jose does our ESG and all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Key, did you have any question this evening? And, okay, I do not have any further questions on this matter, and I would like to open it to the floor so that the public can ask questions they have. You're here first, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, I actually wanted to address the commission, so thank you for providing this platform and to the attendees as well. So again, my name is Armando Murillo. I'm a field representative. And
So, if you don't know, I didn't get which,
where I'm from or who I represent. I'm with Northern California Carpenters Union. I'm sorry, I'll speak a little louder. So, planning and consideration of this kind shows that the city of Cupertino is, doing the right thing when it comes to meeting regional needs housing allocation. By looking into the different variables which affect these entitlement funds, which will be allocated with regard to development in Cupertino and its housing needs. But, I was kind of surprised to see how low the funding was in relation to the other cities. But in doing the right thing also includes selecting responsible contractors for these developments. Contractors that will stay committed, uphold and support labor standards such as livable wages for its workers, promoting state certified apprenticeship programs, providing accessible healthcare, and participating in local hiring practice. Many of these funds often trigger a prevailing wage, but a lot of these contractors misclassify their workers, so they pay into funds that these workers will never benefit from. So their overall package, whatever the wages, the healthcare benefit, a lot of these workers who are misclassified will never see those funds or those benefits. So when we talk about expanding economic opportunities, conditions that pose a threat to health and welfare, and other financial resources that may be lacking, I ask you to take into consideration the men and women who will build these developments with these funds. So a livable wage is fundamental for construction workers to support their families and thrive here in Cupertino. Establishing fair wage standards can alleviate financial strain on public assistance programs and help reinforce economic stability within our communities. The state certified apprenticeship programs are also crucial for encouraging the next generation of skilled carpenters. Investing in these incentives will provide essential training and career paths, ensuring a professionally skilled workforce for years to come. And access to healthcare is not a luxury, but a basic human right. Construction workers work in one of the most dangerous industries in our country. And they deserve quality healthcare. Advocating for comprehensive healthcare coverage will support the health and productivity of carpenters and their families. And lastly, by prioritizing local hiring practices, our community will gain strength by reinvesting in local talent and business. Favoring local hires can foster economic growth and create more inclusive workforce reflective of the city's diversity. So again, I urge you to consider the men and women that will be working on developments based off of the consolidated plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking your time to come in and talk to us.
Thank you. Yes.
Sujatha?
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Sujatha Venkatraman, Executive Director, West Valley Community Services. And I'll make two comments, and Heidi did an excellent presentation to talk about the numbers, but to all of you to understand that for the CDBG funds, we have to build inclusive community. And what I mean by that is we have to have people in all income groups. So we, with the money that we get in supportive services through the city, we help extremely low income folks. These are people who are making 75,000 and less a year. So you saw the graph, right? And that's why it is very important that you partner with nonprofit, because the work that we do with the partnership of the city, we can get these monies. If we don't have opportunities for low income folks like affordable housing that caters to very low, extremely low, these monies will not be there because in your city looks like it is high income. So this is a dichotomy that we have to understand, that for us to be able to get the funds and federal funds and administer and do the work, that this partnership with nonprofit is very critical. And Housing Commission has always been supportive of CDBG applicants, not just West Valley, but many others, and we have benefited. Now, the downside is when the money falls so low. This year we got 11,000 at the end for providing services to 350 households. These are extremely low income households that we're providing services. And imagine what can we do with 11,000. So of course we are leveraging other dollars, but at some point others are going to ask us, why are we paying for City of Cupertino households, right? So it's very critical that you as commissioners are looking at that how do we keep doing the work that we do? How do we benefit more? And how do we put these dollars in the way that it's helping the extremely low income folks and nonprofits that are serving, because it benefits the city and it benefits to bring these money in. And many of the questions were already answered. And I know we are going to jump into the BMR conversation, and I have made some notes, but keep these numbers in mind. So when we're talking about rent at 3,500, and you saw the income that they need, preserving BMR is very critical, and having a plan, building more. So I know you're not planning commission, but you have colleagues to say, let's get affordable housing built faster in the city. Let's not stall, because you have this issue that will come on both sides. You will lose money, you will not be at the table when it's talking about affordable housing. And we're not going to be able to serve the city the right way with not having inclusive community because people are going to move out. So it's not like a question, but more of a comment to keep looking at this from all angles and talking to your colleagues at Planning Commission that we need to move on building more affordable housing. And I know the next agenda is losing BMR, and that is disastrous for the city right now.
Thank you very much for your insights. I know you've been in the city quite some time and
Yes.
know a lot about it. Thank you. I will just ask the gentleman in the back, were you planning to make a comment on this agenda item?
I could, would that come to the table?
Yep.
Or is it-
Yeah.
If you like, yeah.
I'm Andy Lee with Charities Housing. Spoke on the phone the other day. So Andy Leaf with Charities Housing will be working on the Mary Avenue property. So which the city has made available. So kudos to the city of Cupertino for providing this 0.8 acres for an affordable housing development, basically free land for us to, then leverage other funds. So again, thank you. Anyone here that had anything to do with that, or just the city in general. So I just want to say, and I'm not trying to take money away from anybody else, but I mean, if it's provided into an affordable housing development, that pays benefits for 30, 40, 50 years, if we can subsidize the initial upfront costs, then, the rents are going to be stable and not, increasing very, very modestly, over time, just to kind of keep up with inflation, but not anywhere in relation to actual market rents. So, if CDBG, we have used CDBG in home and various funds for affordable housing development. So if that were something the city wanted to consider, that would be a very worthwhile place to put it. We can also use the funds for services at the property. So that could be sort of a synergy of services and
Yeah.
making the affordable development come to fruition. And then we'll have affordable units for construction workers and everybody else. And of course, we will be paying prevailing wage on the project. So when we get to that point. And anyway, that's about all I have to say, and appreciate the good work you're all doing.
Well, thank you very much for speaking up for Charities Housing and
All right.
getting us a little bit more, knowing what's happening. That's great. So Weg will bring the conversation then back to the commission. But what we will do now is we can have, comments, and we can also, if I hear a motion, to vote on this,
So moved.
and do I hear a second? Okay, because now we can then talk and then vote at the end of our discussion. Which again, we don't, just so you know, we're receiving the report, we're not approving anything tonight. So if we can keep it a little short so we can move on to the next one. And if you don't mind, I'll just go around this way. Because it's easy for me to see over there and see you guys, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm going to go over here. So Vice Chair Goals, do you have any comments? Also, Commissioner Wade?
I just want to know what, this motion is essentially just to say that we are receiving the.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. It says that we received it, we understood it, we will talk about it a little, and we will see it again in the spring. When we will get more information about the actual funds that are going to be spent.
So I do have a question, it's related to charities, is it charities housing?
Yes, sir.
So when you mention home, do you actually avail home as of now from the county in some fashion? Could you clarify that? Because
Yeah.
that was one of the items in the presentation, so.
Well, we've utilized home funds through various cities, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, San Jose, Santa Clara, I believe. So some cities that have home funds have put them into low affordable housing development, plus the county.
When you.
And the state, HCD has home funds, so, yeah.
Thank
I think
you.
that's very.
Thank you. And Commissioner Doss?
Sure, so I have one question is that I see the agenda item is receive a presentation on the development of the next 5 years
Mhm.
CDBG consolidated plan.
Mhm.
And I see we covered most of the sections, but the last section also talks about a strategic plan on what we are planning to do. So do we plan to cover that? I mean, I'll approve the motion, but do we plan to cover that in March or right now?
Oh, yeah, so when Heidi has basically completed development of that plan, there will also be a section called the strategic plan, which is kind of like, okay, so like what are we gonna spend the money on? Like, what are the priorities?
Okay.
And that'll be covered when the plan is complete.
Okay.
So that'll be a March discussion.
So that means even if it's a part of the agenda, the strategic plan is on hold for discussion later.
Right, we can't quite make it without it, the plan being complete, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your questions.
I have one more question.
Okay. Yes.
So at what stage are we in terms of both needs analysis in the market, thing that where exactly we are before we can come up with a strategy?
Oh, that's what comes last, right? Because after you've done all your demographic research and market research, economic research, then you have a complete plan, then you understand what the priorities are for the city. That's when you can say, okay, so in order to meet those priorities, we're gonna spend our money in X ways, right? So right now, we're still in development of the plan, that's why we don't have a strategic plan yet, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to have a motion for, oh no, I think we just take the vote now, because we already
Sure.
have the motion second.
Yeah,
Can you take the vote, please?
absolutely, so when I say your name, please say aye, nay, or abstain. Chair Cunningham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Wilson, Commissioner He,
Aye.
Commissioner Tatachari.
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Motion passed.
Motion passed. Thank you very much for all your time for coming as well. So our next agenda item is item number 4, which is a study session to amend the below market rate admin manual and or draft a new city ordinance to include any new anti-displacement policy. And please hold questions until after they complete the presentation. And just so you know, if we decide on doing an ordinance, Nikki will draft one after the meeting based on our direction. And so the recommended action is to receive the presentation and recommend approval. So this is where we are going to approve of a policy for anti-displacement for tenants residing in expiring below market rate units to the city council. Go there for adoption. So, okay, Nikki, I think you were planning to do the presentation?
Yep.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for attending. We reached the highest priority item, right, of tonight's meeting, the anti-displacement policy study session. It is called a study session and not a public hearing like you guys are normally used to, because there isn't really an actual draft or a policy to vote on yet, right? But this is essentially me as staff getting direction from an appointed body, you guys, on a policy decision, right? I'm going to present to you an issue and 6 essentially potential resolutions to that. And I'm going to need basically from you guys a preference on what strategy to use to answer this issue. And based on that, that could mean either an amendment or a BMR manual. It could mean drafting a new ordinance. It really just depends on the decision that the commission makes tonight. So let's get started. The issue with that the city is facing in regards to anti-displacement is we currently have our below market rate inclusionary policy. It requires all market rate housing developments to include 15% of their units as affordable, right? So if they have 100 units, 15% of them have to be set aside for people that are low or moderate income. That's the rule. Now, we've had this policy in place since 1995, and that policy has gone through a lot of different iterations and amendments. Currently, the rule is when they make these units, they have to remain affordable for a term of 99 years or for the life of the property, essentially forever, right? So we don't have to worry about expiration for those new ones, but for the ones that were made back in the 90s and the 80s, the policy was 35 years, right? And 35 years after the 90s is now. And what we and a lot of other cities are now facing is what do we do when in a rental property, you have people who are basically going to see a rental increase potentially of like 200%, 300%, right? We need an anti-displacement policy to keep those people from essentially being pushed out of the city. Because what'll happen is when that deadline hits, they'll be free to increase it to market rate. And I just want to very briefly say, we cannot do rent stabilization in the form of rent control. AB 1482 has explicitly stated that for a BMR unit, when it expires, landlords will be allowed to charge what they call the natural rate. So we have to get approval, right? So it's not so simple as just doing a rental control. So first, I want to bring up on the screen, what are the expiring rental units that we're expecting to see from now until 2040? You see, it's pretty front loaded to everything like happening in the next 5 years, 95 expiring by 2030. And then we see another group happening towards the end of 2040. But right now, we are kind of looking at all those ones that have the expiration of 2026, right? That's our highest priority. 39 units is included in that category. So this is priority. This is pressing issue. And we really need to have a policy in place, not just because, we said we would in the housing element, but because in order to have something effective that would help those people in time by 2026, we need to have basically something decided tonight by this commission so that I can either bring it back to you guys early next year or take it to the council early next year, early 2025, right? So that way we have a year basically between now and then they start expiring. So in the housing element, there are two strategies, H3 3.32 and 3.36, that basically commit us to doing this, right? So we need to do this no matter, we're legally bound to. H 3.32 was ensuring proper legal and noticing procedure for properties of expiring BMR rental units. That has been done by staff. We called those 3 properties. We made sure that all those tenants got proper noticing of their use expiring. And we actually found for 2 of them, they did not. And so for those ones, we made sure they sent out those notices immediately, and they have. And actually, they get an extension, luckily, right? For the affordability of the units based on the new noticing date. So we got them a little bit of time for those units, but there are some still that are expiring in 2026. The other strategy is to study anti-displacement by December 2024. Today is the study session, so we have done that, and to create a new policy by June 2025. Okay, so option number 1, we're now getting into the options. Anti-displacement BMR waitlist priority. So when people apply into our BMR waitlist, we currently have something called the live work preference, right? They can get priority points if they are currently a Cupertino resident, a Cupertino employee, or a Cupertino public worker. And what happens is when they get those priority points, they get like shot up in the lottery. So that when we do lottery for who gets the new available units when they become available, they're at the front of the list. And so this proposal is essentially to create 3 more points in the system called the BMR displaced category, where if one is a tenant of a BMR rental that is expiring within 12 months, they can reapply into this, get 3 additional priority points. So that will shoot them essentially right to the front of the line. That will so that when a new unit comes available, they can essentially be matched into another one quickly before theirs expires. This is good for a lot of reasons, right? Number 1, we already know they qualify as a BMR tenant. They've been one, and they're already also Cupertino residents and workers, right? So this is kind of in line with what we already currently have, and we'll just expand on that. In order to do this, we will need to amend the BMR admin manual. And that can be done essentially with a resolution. So this is what that would look like, right? And this is what the example priority list looks like. Everyone with like a higher amount of preference points gets shot up to the top, and then they get assigned a random number, right? And then we kind of pick like a random number generator to pick people to get units when they become available. So the people with the highest priority list, they would just immediately get shot up. That's kind of what it would look like essentially, right? So everyone who doesn't have these 3 additional priority points, right? They'd be down there. And that's still pretty high, right? There's only like 5 people in front of them, right? But those people who are in those units that are expiring, they will get in there first. That's kind of what we're proposing, and that's what it would look like. So it's very doable. By the way, we've reached out to Rice Housing, which is our BMR administrators, and they are fully on board with this. Option number 2, anti-displacement relocation assistance. So, the cost of relocating out of a BMR unit into a market unit are extremely high, right? You have to consider all these costs that are coming into play. You need to pay a deposit. You need to pay your first and last month of rent. You have application fees, movers, storage. These are not things that are cheap, and people that are in BMR units don't really have that kind of money available. So we would add a responsibility to property owners. These are people that currently have BMR units in their agreements to pay to the tenants 3 months of fair market rent. If a tenant moves from a BMR to a market rate unit within 12 months of the expiration date. In other words, that's the definition of someone getting displaced, right? Someone who gets asked to move out of their BMR unit and go into a market rate unit within 12 months of that expiration date, then their property owner is responsible for paying them 3 months of fair market rent. This is actually something we're seeing in a lot of cities. Mountain View, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Redwood City. This is, we've done the Nexus study. This is kind of commonplace practice, right? 3 markets, fair market rent. Why? Because fair market rent is based on what is the average affordable unit to someone making 100% of AMI, in other words, average income. 3 months because you have your first and last month of rent and your deposit, which is typically 1 month rent, right? That's the calculation for it. So it's not a number we pulled out of thin air, right? There's a lot of research that went into this. And also I should add, the county of Santa Clara is also proposing this right now to do that for all the units in the unincorporated county. In order to do this, we would need to pass a new city ordinance, right? Because anti-displacement is touched on in the tenant bill of rights that was passed in 2029, also known as AB 14. We need to pass our own local ordinance that is equally or more protective than that in order for this to be enforceable. Okay, this is an example of what fair market rent looks like. It's not a number that I made, created by HCD. It's based on what your average county's income is. And then you divide that by 12, because 12 months, and then divide by 3, because the metric is you should be paying more than a third of your income to your housing costs. So, based on your family size, assuming a 1-to-1 ratio of 1 person to 1 bedroom categories, right? And then studio, you get a special one because it's different. That's what fair market rate looks like. And then so when you multiply that by 3, right? That's the payout you're expecting per bedroom. Now, the majority of our BMR units are 1 to 2 bedrooms. So it would be on average $9,000 per tenant. That's the payment you're looking at. Okay, option 3 is both, right? There's no fundamental reason why we can't do both. Anti-displacement waitlist priority, it provides them a long-term structural solution because it gets them back into the BMR system. The problem is it's dependent on new units becoming available in time, right? Anti-displacement relocation assistance is good for short-term assistance as an emergency intervention, right? But what happens after 3 months? Right, so it's got the short-term and the long-term. So pursuing both of these options would provide the most comprehensive tenant protections. That's option 3. Alternatives. So we have considered other iterations of these proposals. And we brought them for you tonight. You can vote to be in favor of an alternative if that's what you believe. But we've made them alternatives rather than the primary proposals for reasons, and we will explain why too. So option 1B, instead of creating a citywide anti-displacement priority, we just negotiate anti-displacement priority into the conditions of approval individually with each development as they come available, right? So like kind of like how the planning commission kind of requires them to be like, okay, we want the frontage here, we want trees here. We can also say, we want you to have anti-displacement priority into those conditions of approval. The reason why this is an alternative and not a priority, and we're not super in favor of this, is because this is technically not a policy. So it wouldn't satisfy our housing element requirements to develop a new policy. right? It's piecemeal. It's not actually like systemic or structural. And then also it's highly development on the developer, right? If we encounter a developer that doesn't want to work with us, we don't really have any options. So that's the problem with that one. It would effectively do the same thing though, if they are willing to work with us. Option 2B, so this is related to the relocation assistance. Instead of requiring property owners to pay them to their tenants, we could use city BMR funds to either supplement, right, or extend the relocation assistance. Say the property owners do 3 months and say we want to add a 4th month out of our own city BMR fund. Something to consider with that though is that there'd be very large impact to our BMR fund. And then that could inhibit our ability to develop affordable housing, right? If we are spending it all on tenant protections. Fiscal impact. So this is where I get into like the monetary effects of things being proposed. If either or both options, meaning option A, B, or C, are pursued as they are written, there would be no fiscal impact to the city, right? If we were to choose option 2B, to use city BMR funds to cover the costs of the relocation assistance or to extend the relocation assistance. Those numbers are on the screen for you here. It would cost the BMR fund approximately $342,000 just for 1 month, right? Based on the calculation of $9,000 per unit, times 114 units. That would be 1 month of additional assistance. And then there's also if we were to, for some reason, choose to do all 3 months out of the BMR fund, it would cost $1,026,000 for assistance to all 114 units. So that would be the fiscal impact of option 2. All other options, no fiscal impact. Okay, this is the part of the discussion where I'd like to open it to the commissioners to discuss what option they are in favor of. Or actually, no, let me take it back. First, let me open it to just clarifying questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think clarifying questions are in order. I know I have questions and I'm going to, hold on.
I
Like,
can go through the 1, 2, and 3 once more, just for a recapitulation.
Okay. Very quickly. One, anti-displacement waitlist priority. Option 2, anti-displacement relocation assistance. Option 3, both. And then alternatives, option 1B is to do conditions of approval to have anti-displacement waitlist priority. Then option 2B is to use city BMR fund to do relocation assistance rather than having landlords pay it out. Okay.
okay,
Clarifying
thank you.
questions.
Thank you. And I do want to go around the table and ask people if they have clarifying questions at this
I
time.
need to run to the bathroom real quick, but I have a lot to say, so I'll come.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
I can ask just one question.
Sure.
So based on the information presented and based on the no fiscal impact on 1 and 2, as a staff member, based on your presentation, you're recommending option 3, which is both?
Staff does not have an official recommendation at this time because we really want this to be at the direction of this body, right? I'm only presenting the options and describing like what their effects would be and why we might want to pursue them. Ultimately, this has to come from you guys.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that staff has been making any moves in any particular way because this could become contentious, right? And I want to make sure it's very clear, right, that the public participation process has not been skirted in any way. So there's nothing drafted yet, right? There's nothing written to vote on or anything yet, right? After it is only that I will raise it
Based on our direction.
based on the direction.
Right. Okay, and I know I have a couple of clarifying questions. I think I'll go first simply because I'd like to get because I think it's a wonderment is the discussions with the contractors, they have not had these requirements to pay this assistance before. So
No.
this isn't something they've been planning for.
No.
For any length of time. They don't know about it.
Yeah.
It'll come and hit them. This is something that seems like it's within their financial capabilities. I mean, did talk about that it's being done in other, places.
Yeah.
How does that work? When they go to the contractors who have not been involved with this before and say, if anybody gets displaced, then you're on the hook to pay for their replacement costs.
Right. It's a great question. This is something that's usually met with some contention, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Makes
and, you know, there's a fiscal cost related to asking
Mhm.
someone who probably wasn't anticipating a
Mhm.
cost to now cover it. What happens in housing, right? I think that the answer, the reason why we have to take this to a public body ultimately is we're weighing the priorities, right? You have competing
Right.
priorities in your community that you
Right.
need to answer to. You have one priority, which is how do we keep people who are being displaced from being displaced? And the other is how do we honor commitments, right, to property owners who did business in Cupertino. And now they right, now something has blindsided them potentially, right? And the way staff wants to do is potentially not blindside them by holding
Right.
these meetings out in public. And
Right,
then after getting direction on what to do, to involve them immediately, right? To consult them, let them know this is what's happening and give them a chance to speak their piece as well. People on either side of the issue, right? Ultimately, what's going to happen is something that somebody will get upset about. And that's
Right.
just something you have to accept as part
Right.
of this process.
okay,
Yeah.
something we have to accept as part of the process. So the other question I had is, well, prior to this, as we talked through the housing element process, the question was, what did we do before this to talk to contractors about not contractors, the property owners to
Hmm.
stay in the program
Right,
rather than expiring at the end of the 35 years? Have we had those discussions with them rather than having them decide to exit the program?
yes. So that's a great
Okay.
question. Program.
Repeat that, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
not talking to the correct. The idea is that, when we were talking about the housing element, the question had been, what are we talking to those property owners about whose properties are going to expire? How do we encourage them to stay in the program rather than when the program ends, they merely, and to think that I don't know if that was even legal, to raise their prices, so much,
Yeah.
They would love that.
huh?
Would love that to raise the prices.
No, no, yes, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So I think
I spoke too fast through my question, which was, what did we ever talk to the existing property owners
Yeah,
about staying in the program
so,
rather than exiting the program? Did we ever process that question
right,
to the property owners in advance of
Right.
today?
it's a great question, and unfortunately, the thing is, these are market rate developments. These are privately owned market rate developments.
Yes,
That
Understand.
that stand to gain a great financial advantage
Hmm.
to exit the program.
Yeah.
These are not nonprofit organizations who own these properties. So we can.
so that
we can-
means we didn't talk to them. Is
So-
that, I'm just asking a question. Did we ever talk to them about whether they'd like to stay in the program?
We have consulted some, right?
Okay, that's the
And-
question.
And they wanted to move forward with a sale to
Hmm,
other market rate
Okay,
groups.
I mean, I understand that. I
Yeah,
just thought there
yeah.
was a process in the beginning, because it's been several years I've been
Yeah.
on this commission.
Yes.
And that was something that I had been asked at that time. And so I was just curious,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you met her, if you talked about it
There
at
has
all,
been some
it was met with resistance.
And yes, we have discussed, right, with some
Okay,
property owners about the possibility. Right, because what you can do is you can offer like, monetary
Mhm.
funds to do rehabilitation or something, and then as part of that action, you can add deed restrictions that extend affordability.
Mhm.
But you weigh the value of how much those rehabilitation actions are worth versus how much reasonable, right? Would be worth essentially. And so-
Right.
so it's not an action that's been met with a lot of.
Well, and I have to admit, I understand all about
Yeah.
that. I just
Yeah.
was wondering if there were ever for-profit outfits that had a bit of a heart for helping other people. That was my question, and it sounds like perhaps not. I don't know, but that's where I was coming from at the time that I asked the question. And so it sounds disappointing to me that in fact, we didn't have even one, one for-profit company that said, okay, I'm okay.
Later on if you want, because West Valley Community Services used to run the BMR program for the city of Cupertino.
Oh.
Before it went to Rice. So
Okay.
there have been instances like that where we've had this conversation.
Ah,
To Nikki's point, these are market price
right.
developers. And this 35 years was the constraint the city could put on them. And they were waiting for that 35 years, to happen, right? They were waiting because that's the only way to recoup. Because if it's a nonprofit, so West Valley Community Services as a nonprofit has 28 units
Yeah.
of BMR in extremely low. We
Yeah.
don't make any, that's the intention, right? And it is for a lifetime.
Right.
But when we went to these, when it was negotiated at that time under the
Oh.
BMR, this is the restraint that we gave them, and we've had it. And Nikki, if you look at it, many years ago, I was in the conversation with Hamptons, with Irvine, when we were looking at the displacement policy at that time. But it's very hard to bind them. So that's why doing a policy like that is very helpful. And if you look at the numbers, if you look at it, how many were built after? If you look at what was built later, very few. So you're not even adding to the rate that you're going to remove these in BMR. And that's the biggest risk you all have to, all of you sitting here as commissioners have to really, really think about.
Yeah.
Because the amount of units that are coming out, you're not adding at the rate. And we never did after that period. If you, Nikki, you can go back to that slide, is look at how many units you've added.
Right.
So that's a mistake we've done, and we are now in this mess. Connie, to your point, it's been, and they're not going to negotiate on that. But Nikki, to your point, like, is where is the bargaining, right?
Yeah.
If they come halfway, we come halfway and we do it. I want to wait for it, but as a nonprofit, I've been fighting on affordable housing. If you look at these options, right? We have an avenue, and displacement policy needs to be written down. Otherwise, you're displacing these units and the families.
Yeah.
And just to put a human value, these are people who are working at your Target. These are people who are working at your schools. These are your custodians.
Right.
These are the lowest paid in your fire department
Mhm.
and your salons. And we have to, because it was designed for people to work and live in Cupertino.
Mhm.
And we work with these folks all the time. So displacing them and 3 times rent is just impossible. And doing one option will be good if you're building at a rate. Because even if they go on the wait list, you're not building. And we can't say like, okay, we'll build in 1 year. We may not build in 1 year. So doing option 1 and 2 with that would be the best. Like 3 is the best option, right? You negotiate. Nikki, I do have a question. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn. Is how much money is sitting in the BMR funds?
It's in total.
Yeah.
About 4 million, but we ineffectively, we have about 4 million, right? Because we also have to consider the costs that are currently encumbered in it, right, to administer the BMR units. So effectively, there's around
4 million. Okay. And then the home, we cannot tap into the home funds for this, right? It's not building.
No,
Rental is, no,
home is
ESG?
home is pretty much restricted to pre-development acquisition, that kind of stuff. And ESG is people who are basically at risk or currently facing,
But they would face homelessness.
right, sorry?
They would face homelessness.
Right. The only thing is with ESG, this is like starting to get into the weeds of federal regulations, but there's a policy that you have to have matching funds committed to any kind of ESG effort.
So I'm willing to talk to you about that. Here's what I'm thinking. If we go to option 3, cut the cost of the city get the developer, get West Valley in it, that we apply for funds for rental assistance, your option 3 will work.
Can you send an email?
I will do that.
Okay, all right.
Thank
But we need help to, because you need a nonprofit to be there, right? Like if we are doing rental assistance administration, if I have the money, we can get it. I'm just saying, I'm giving an option, like it doesn't have to be this 1 million for the city. We can look at it
Yeah,
creative.
right. We should also include some from San Jose. for that.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Anyways, continue.
I actually wanted to ask, like, how come we're not building more affordable housing units?
That's the question I've been fighting for, is why don't we build more? It's hard.
It's
Very
difficult.
hard. You can ask Charity Housing how hard it is to build. It is, and how hard it is to push policy, how hard it stalls in many commissions and then in city. We've not had any property built. It's our most painful conversation. Valco's still sitting.
That's right. I remember when I first came on this committee.
Connie, when was that? Tell me when we started talking about Valco. Or this PM.
6 years ago. I'll just say six. Yeah, 2018. The question had been, because I had specifically brought up at this commission, why don't we have a goal of building X number each year? And after talking with Sujatha and also other people, I found out, yeah, that was like unrealistic. That will never get even building one unit, having that goal was just dead on arrival. So that's why I was so excited about the housing element and the fact that it's got a goal of building a number of 991, I think you said was the number, units, in the next 8 years. That's wonderful. And then it had anti-displacement verbiage in there for to meet the laws for the housing element. So I was very excited about that. But I do know that there's lots of things that go into building BMR housing, and certainly the developers that are committing to do it, they have to stay committed to it and start their project.
Yeah.
So none of this is done. We've got a plan and
Yeah.
it's allowing people to do these things, but there's nothing that says, hey, you gotta build this here and you gotta build that there.
No, even the
That's-
BMR RFQ. So Nikki, how many times have you put the RFQ and nobody has come through for the 4 million?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why
I-
this might not be ready at the time that we put it out. Actually, I kind of want to take it back and bring it back to the conversation of BMR. It's just, I think we could talk about why housing hasn't been built for days, right? But I really, really need to get a decision on this whole
Yeah,
thing.
I not only have questions, I also have something else to say.
Yeah.
Please.
So as a renter myself, I want to bring in light that something that renters struggle with a lot is when they move out, the security deposit. So a lot of the times, even though we have laws that says that, you're entitled to like pre-inspection, or like the landlords are supposed to give you a list of breakdown, like why they're charging you for the security deposit. A lot of times that the landlords, like, they don't do that, and then sometimes the tenants, they don't know about like their rights. And I was doing some research, so I found out that California has this law that if the amount the landlord is deducting from security deposit is less than $125, they don't need to give an explanation. So they only need to give a list, explanation, whatever, when the amount they're deducting is above 125. So $125 like deduction for us may not be like a lot, but like for low income families and extremely low income families, that could be like their grocery money. So I just want to bring in light that especially if we're going with a combination of one or two, or like just option two, if we're gonna ask the developers to like pay their 3-month rent, basically, there is a chance that they might try to, like take some back from security deposit, or just like in general, because this practice is quite, I would say, universal. And I actually have something to present when it comes to like the commissioner reports. So I just want to bring it in light, and if we are going to add that to like amendment or like, city something, I want to make sure that for, at least for these people, that the city keep an eye on the security deposit that they're getting from, and it would be nice if we mandate those landlords to, whatever the amount is, like give them a detailed list. That's it. That's my comment.
That's good.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
I have a lot of questions.
Okay,
Well, I guess that's my major comment. Maybe you guys touched on this when I was in the bathroom, but like the city can negotiate with the developers, right? It's not like either the developers pay 3 months or the city, like you guys can discuss and like meet in the middle, like maybe, city 1 month.
it wouldn't
developer 1
be
month.
a negotiation between us and the developers because I would imagine what they would ask for is for the city to pay for it all. What I'm asking tonight is for the commission to give me direction on what you believe the best policy to be. For developers to pay for that relocation fee, or for the city to pay for that relocation fee, or for a combination, or for both, or for, like that's the decision I'm asking you guys to make.
So if we ask the developers to pay like all of it hypothetically, would that discourage more developers to like work with us in the future? Because my understanding is that now that the expiration date is like 99 years, so maybe we don't have the future problems of like, like other developers may be like, when we entered this agreement, City of Cupertino say 35 years and done, now they're asking us to pay 3 months of rent. So now like we're not gonna work with City of Cupertino. Do you think that's gonna happen if we ask those developers to pay the 3 month rent?
It's entirely possible. I just wanna say that other cities have done this, right? And those developers have continued to build housing because there's a lot of money still to be made in real estate. You're weighing pros and cons of you basically add an additional cost to consider when you add this relocation fee. And it's really only for the 114 expiring units that were built in the 80s and 90s. So when you're talking about new development, you're going under the rules with the new 99-year expiration. So this relocation fee really wouldn't apply to new development. So I wouldn't see how it would discourage new development. Yeah.
Your comments did make me think of something.
Yeah.
Which is that at first I was perhaps more concerned than I should have been.
Yeah.
About the contractor being bothered by this.
Yeah.
They're not bothered, apparently, if all these people get kicked out and they are raising their rent by some obscene amount.
Right.
Why should I care about their feelings, right? They have enough money to handle those things, whereas these folks have no ability.
Part of their cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to admit, this discussion has helped answer my question. Yeah, and I don't feel sorry for them anymore. Okay, yeah, you were on the
I have
same.
couple of questions, I think 3 questions probably. First question is that if we come up with some policy guidelines or whatever, is it going to be retroactive for these units, 114 units?
So this policy that we create would be in the application of any kind of unit that's expiring in the next 3 months, right? So even though you might think it's retroactive because there were units that were created in the past, this is essentially a new agreement that's being made for starting now going forward. You know what I mean? So yes, essentially all these 114 units would be effective. Yes. Yeah.
Is that can you clarify from the city side about this, or are you definite about this? I mean, why I'm saying is because the housing element of this is being created as of T25, 40, 2025, 40. I guess that's a part 2015 to 2040, which is post 1995. So the housing element that we are talking about has been in vogue from 2015 to 2040. So that is where my question is, but I will take your answer because that's a good answer for it. to know that it is going to be retroactive. At least for these 114 units. The second question is that in the housing element, we already have, which is being actually, it's mandated by HUD, so as part of RENA. So how many units, BMR units are considered to come under the purview of this? Is it only the ELI, or is it ELI and LI? Because there are 4 categories in the RENA. So I wanted to understand which of the categories will come under the purview of this.
Oh, primarily it's low income LI and some VLI. Because these are inclusionary and market rate developments, they mostly follow what is kind of like our prescribed minimums for their developments, right? So we ask them to provide about 7.5% VLI.
No.
7.5% LI, and that's what they made. You really only going to see ELI units in like the truly 100% affordable developments of a nonprofit developer. Because those ones, you really have to find someone who wants to choose to do those ones. It's a little more difficult to get those ones. So primarily LI and VLI to answer your question.
And isn't it also, I thought you had said only these 114 units that were built a long time ago are
Yes.
affected. None of the housing element BMR will be affected.
No,
Because they're 99 years.
yes, that's correct. That's
Because they're 99 years. So they're not affected by this because they're not going to be displacing people for 99 years.
But once the policy is enacted, it will also apply to the current. I mean, whatever is going to be generated, whatever is going to be built.
They would be under the 99.
They-
right. Anything
be under
built,
99
built
years.
now would have a new restriction period of 99 years. So I'm not expecting them to have to give any relocation payments.
Yes.
Right. It's really
Not for
only,
99 years.
yeah, not 99 years really, yeah.
The other thing is, I still do not see. I understand that there are only 114 units that need, that might come under option 2B.
Sorry, all 114 units will be affected by any policy, right? 1, 2, 3, 1B, 1, 2B, all of them would be affected.
No, what I'm saying in terms of cost to the city.
Sure.
So the 2B would, I understand the figure that you're coming with, $1 million.
Yeah.
Somehow, I don't know, I have a feeling that it will create a precedent for something else, so. I have to reserve my comments because I just need to think through this.
Thank
That's
you
fine.
very much for your
That's fine.
comments. And did you have something you wanted to add?
Questions. So can you
Commissioner
go back, the first option on the slide 1? Have patience with me. I have a lot of questions.
That's all right.
So this is option 1, right?
Yes.
And what we are saying is that 114 units, most of them are 35 years, give or take, and that's when they retire. And help me clarify that these 3 bulleted points, Cupertino residents, Cupertino employees, Cupertino public workers, is the whole pool of people applying.
No, sorry, that's the priority point pools, right? So imagine a big group of people that are applying. You can kind of skip to the head of the line or get a priority point if you belong to one of these 3, right? So we have people applying from all around the
Okay,
county,
so
all around the county.
So basically, practically speaking, I think there was a data point that there was 100 some units, 10,000 people applied. So practically speaking, that means if you are not in the priority point, it's very hard to get in and get something realistically, right?
Exactly.
Because many things are not getting added.
That's right.
So now, I personally am a very liberal person, and I think I believe in equal opportunity for all.
Sure.
I'm kind of dead against this option 1, and I'll tell you the reasons why. So first of all, when you are saying that somebody lived there for 35 years, and by virtue of that, they should get plus 3 points, what you are doing is that essentially all those 3 bulleted points, people who are in the queue, you are not giving them an opportunity. Okay, so we are not discriminating rich versus poor, we are discriminating poor versus poor. The second point is that when these people moved into these units 35 years back, they already knew that their term is going to expire at the end of 35 years. It's not like they're getting a surprise that, oh, somebody took over the building and the new property owner is kicking me out. So it's not coming as a surprise to them. Maybe I can finish. Number three is that when somebody has already enjoyed a low rent for 35 years and you're not giving somebody else that opportunity, you are essentially telling that person that, okay, you can live for 35 more years and let the others be pushed out. So this is my comments about option number one. And you can correct me if my understanding is wrong. Because I believe these three bulleted points are the whole pool of people who are really struggling to get something.
Right, so even though it is 35 years ago that these units were created and therefore the restrictions began, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people living there have been living there for 35 years, right?
Maybe they live, their sons live, their nephews live,
No,
they didn't give it up.
No, that's not the case.
Not how it works.
That's not necessarily the case, because what happens is like when you apply into the BMR program, it's based on your household size with you as the head of household, right? And then when the head of household doesn't live there anymore, that's considered non-occupancy, right? So unless that son also qualifies for the BMR program,
Yeah.
then they would be
No, but
forced to-
practically when somebody qualified back then, he was probably in his 30s or 40s. And he's probably still living. Again, everything is probably because I don't have the data, but this is what common sense says. All that I'm saying is that if you are discriminating a poor person versus a poor person, let the second person get a chance.
That's fair. I would say that primarily our BMR residents have not been living there for 35 years.
Okay, that's fine. Even if I live there for 5 years, 7 years, what I'm saying is give the new person a chance.
Okay.
My second comment is if we go to option number 2.
Sure.
So option number 2 basically says that you are trying to get something out of these developers or property owners to help in their relocation assistance. And that's totally fine. I'm all in this for option 2. But the problem is that if the city says that, okay, your BMR term is expiring, this guy is going to go out. You talked about AB 1482.
Yes.
AB 1482 is basically like when there are many things in AB 1482. One is that a landlord cannot evict a tenant without a just cause.
Yes.
Then the second thing is that if you are eliminating without a just cause, then you are forced to give 3 months of rent and relocation assistance.
That's right.
And all these things.
Yes.
So the point is that even if you make this an option by the city, if the property owner sends an attorney letter, they will always win because AB 1482 doesn't apply here. It's just that their term is expiring, they're bumping up the rent and they have a right to do so.
That's a great point. So AB 1482 doesn't touch upon, you're right, on this kind of situation where a tenant is in an expiring BMR unit, right? It only covers unjust evictions. So the reason why I mentioned it is that because we have essentially a tenant protection ordinance that includes this sort of 3 months fair market rent payment. In order for us to like have something that is enforceable, we need to be equally or more protected than the state. That's the kind. So when the state legislates something, and we want to legislate something similar, we've got to have something equivalent or more protective. Like we can't have something less protective. That's why I mentioned it. So in other words, we would have to also adopt the just cause evictions in addition to this, right? In
You
addition to-
see, my point is that if you are going to enforce this, I'm totally in for it and my vote is for option 2. But my worry is that if they sue the city, might not hold up because they signed up for something 35 years back and now you are saying, sorry, they will go, but pay $10,000 to them. They might oppose.
Right.
If I had my money invested in that multifamily thing, I would probably do the same.
Right.
So now let's go to the next option 2A or 2B.
Sure.
So first of all, okay, let's pause in option 3. I think option 3 was, no.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Both. Option 3, both. First of all, there is a little fallacy over here from what I think is because option 3, you are saying that, okay, offer them little money as a short-term solution and also give a little more brownie points to the people who are living there as a long-term solution. If you are allowing the people to live more by giving them +3 points, you are essentially negating option 2. In other words, if you go for option 1, you might not even meet option 2.
If you, well, not necessarily, right? Because if you get.
Let's say a practical
point,
you have only so many 5 units and there are 50 people competing, those who have got +3 points because you have 111 of them, chances are very, very high they will get in. If
Right.
they get in, then there's no point of displacing them. You're displacing other people. So that means you are saying that, okay, give whoever can get in, let them get in, and whoever can't get in, give them some money.
So that's highly dependent on what more units being built, so.
Yeah.
I'm saying that, I assume that 0 units are being built.
Yeah.
So that means, what I'm saying is that option 3 is nice to see. But if option 1 kicks in, option 2 probably mitigates or goes down in importance, right?
It's a timing issue.
It's a timing issue.
So you're saying realistically it is, but let's say that in March they have to be evicted because it's coming. They won't get a BMR unit immediately. These people who are leaving, just let's talk about Joe,
No, the
right?
point is that.
Let me
Okay,
finish.
but-
Let me finish. So Joe is going to, his lease is now is going to be displaced in March. Okay? If he stays in the unit, he pays 3 times the rent. Right? April. If you put him even in option 1, BMR hasn't opened up. Because BMR wait list, even in the priority points, 6 months to a year.
I see.
So when I'm saying option 3, you're giving some leeway and some financial support.
Okay.
Otherwise, because of the timing issue, if everything was happening the right way, there was units
I
available,
get it now.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that,
work.
yeah, I thought that he will continue to stay,
No.
but I understand now that
Time.
that unit is going to be raised to 3x the rent no matter what.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So now if we go to option 2B, there was an option, for example, I think there was 1B, 2B. So 1B is anti-displacement. So here, I'm not sure, for example, again, maybe going back to Govind's point, option 1B is something forward-looking, right? In other words, if you are saying going forward means if let's say RISE happens or ABC development happens,
Yeah.
you negotiate with the developer, he needs to follow something. But that doesn't mean that you can renegotiate with people who have already done something 35 years back, right?
So yeah, option 1B is negotiating the anti-displacement priority waitlist into new development. So these, let's just say, for example, Valco, because.
No, I understand.
Coming up, what would happen is we would say, okay, Valco, when you go out and try to fill up these units, please give the highest priority to people that are in an expiring BMR unit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter the fact that it's not touching upon the old developments. It's all about just getting people into a new unit.
Yes, I agree, and I'm totally in for 1B. But what I'm saying is that 1B is a solution to a problem which doesn't even exist today. What exists today is that 111 people are going to be displaced. How do we help them?
Yeah.
1B doesn't apply to them, no?
It does. It does. It would help.
How are you going
It
to
would
go
get.
back to that person and say that you cannot?
So 1B is essentially for whatever new development is coming in to work in priority for anti-displacement. So it would help them, right? Because as someone who is in a unit that is expiring, they would be able to apply into a new development and get into there.
Okay, so then that brings back to Sujata's point that there are not enough things coming up. If there are things coming up, great, we can apply the laws to them. So this kind of goes down in priority or I think importance. It's a theoretical option, but it's probably not a very practical help.
Sure.
And option 2B, you are saying BMR funds, and I think you showed some BMR funds, how much is needed to keep up.
Yes.
If you see it's about $1 million and we are getting only less than 200. So the numbers don't match up. So what I'm saying is that my comments out of all these.
That's a
options-
different number. I'm sorry.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Sorry.
you were comparing the million to some 200, that was CDBG funds, that's you. that you were just-
CDB is
The
different.
amount of
Oh,
money.
so
being
this one,
applied
1
is
million, we are
funded
already-
4 million. 4 million.
So in that next slide, that $1 million we already have on the table.
So, so BMR funds are
We
BMR
have
funds are different than CDBG, right? CDBG is a federal grant.
It's federal.
Federal grant that we get. It's mostly for infrastructure, but it's also for public services. The BMR funds is something that we get from developments.
They're local.
Yeah, we charge developers, an impact fee, basically, when they get their building permits. And we take some money that way and we bring it into our local BMR fund. So right now, the balance of our local BMR fund is about effectively 4 million.
4 million, right? And we're spending about $1 million for 3 months. So that means 4 million will probably get exhausted in a year, give or take.
Right, that's the deal.
I don't think we should go that route. We have some business.
Sorry.
It's
Wait, then let me re-explain. So if the proposal is to do 3 months of assistance per tenant, then the total cost of that for all 114 units is 1 million.
1 million.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be exhausted in 3 months. It's the type of assistance, right? If the assistance is for 3 months,
I see.
it would cost the city 1 million,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
All 114 units
That-
are
that- that's
are
what-
spread out.
that's what
over
it
time.
says. That's what it's saying. That's what I'm saying.
Several years.
It would be over several years, effectively all the way until 2040, around 20. yeah.
What's
And my
like the,
last question.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask, what's the annual increase in BMR?
If you build more, it will increase more.
Yeah, that I unfortunately, I don't really have a helpful answer to that question because how many more BMR units we get, that's highly dependent on, how many developers want to build. I can't force them to build more house. I wish I could, right? But, that depends on when they want to build the units and then I can say, okay, please give me 15% affordable.
And my last comment is about that 99 years new law.
Yes,
I
sure.
think that is definitely a good law, but the only problem is that what I see is that me and you will not be there, but I think after 99 years, our grandkids will be on this table discussing what we're now 99 years have passed.
Yeah.
Yes, one thing at a time. One thing at a time.
I agree, and I'll just say as Sujata said, to bring people to the table, people have to give a certain number, right, to make them happy.
Yeah.
In the 80s, the number that made them happy was 35.
Yeah.
And now it's 99. I don't think people would accept for it. Yeah.
Oh, add one thing with your question on the priorities, one. The think of it is that it's not about poor people against poor people. The current people who are on the wait list are managing the rent, right? The displaced people, it'll be 3 times the rent. So someone who's paying 2,000 right now has a rent burden of 7,000.
And they can't
Hence,
afford
being
it.
on the
I know, but the problem is that that person is being forced to pay the rent. You see, the person, you are saying that they are already paying the rent, they are mentally used to
May I
that.
take time out here, please? Because I think I understand what you're saying and I understand what you're saying, and I think that's enough for me to be able to make a decision. You don't have to win an argument at all. All you have to do is, I understand your point, I understand your point. And we do have to come to closure on this, so.
One last
Okay,
question.
one more question, but only if you need it, one more question in order to make a decision about the thing at hand. Go ahead.
So for the priority points, do we also take into account like lowest income, low income, or like after the cutoff?
It does. So basically when a unit comes available, right? We check the restriction of that unit. So if it's restricted to extremely low income, only 30% AMI, if you have a 50% AMI, right, you're not going to be matched to that unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and you had one more question that you needed before you.
So can we have a motion which includes saying in the anti-displacement policy, can we also say that both AB 1436 and this policy will be in effect? Like we don't want to only choose this.
Yeah.
But have AB 1436, because AB 1436 requires just cause.
Yes.
So we don't want to leave that aside because that is not covered in the anti-displacement itself. So can we have that included as part of it?
Yes.
Well, first thing we need to do is call the motion.
Oh, wait,
And then we can discuss various amendments.
agree.
So to your point, AB 1482 is a state law and it's been passed by the California State Legislature, right? So it is in effect. It is in effect for all the state of California, no matter what. The reason why I've included it is because I'm just saying that if we were to do option 2, the reason why it has to be a city council ordinance is because it touches on very similar things. And so we would have to basically adopt something that also covers everything that it had to make sure it's also equally as protective. That's what I was saying. So whatever you vote for tonight will not invalidate 18482. AB 1482 will be in place no matter what. And to your point, tonight is a study session,
Mhm.
right? So we're not making a motion where we all unanimously agree
Mhm.
on 1 or 2 options. I can sense that we don't, right? I would like to hear from each of you basically what you believe we should do. And we're taking notes, right? And just basically based on what I hear as a majority is what we'll kind of craft together some kind of draft proposal for policy. And that is how we will move forward, but this is a study session, right? So not an official like action motion, like we're voting for this and we all have to agree on it kind of thing, right?
Well, the only reason that I
Yeah,
said what I did is
Yeah.
because the recommended action is to receive all this.
right,
And then to recommend approval of a policy of
Right.
anti-displacement.
Right.
So I have to admit, I'm okay to change that, but it's
Oh.
normally we vote on this thing, and that's what the motion would be for, is just.
So you're going to each commissioner, you're asking us if we're in favor of 1, 2, or 3,
yeah,
correct?
basically, I'd like to
Okay.
hear from each of you, what would you like to do?
Okay.
Wait, I just wanted to ask, so I thought that few minutes back you said that I do need to leave today with one option. So now you're saying that we don't need to necessarily.
No,
No,
sorry,
it's a
sorry,
study
so,
session.
so this is a study session, so
Study
I,
session.
what I want to hear from each of you is what you think we should do, 1, 2, or 3, or 1B or 2B or something like that, right? And then, once we've got a majority, and we understand like, okay, sounds like the commission wants to do, this is, say, for example, A and B, or whatever, right? Then we can make a motion, commission recommends this, that staff moves forward with this proposal, and then I can start drafting something, right? So I wanted to just like hear from everybody, like what they want, essentially, before we make that motion, right? Yeah,
Can we start that process?
yeah.
And how do you start the process without calling the motion?
Why don't we just,
Call on us
yeah, why don't we just go down the line and everyone's.
All right.
Why don't we start with you, Chair
Yeah.
Cunningham?
Oh, goody. Well, I do agree that we need a anti-displacement policy. I like the beginning one, what you had, 1A and 1B.
Okay.
I think that was it, right? 1A and 1B, or
Okay.
both, or
Yeah,
I
both.
would go with both. And
Yeah,
the
both.
only comment that I would make about the wait list. I don't think we're having, in this case, the people being displaced are in the worst possible position.
Yes.
That being said, the wait list always has priorities among poor people, always. And one thing that may come up during this whole discussion is that there are categories that do not get points for being on the, they don't have points to be on the wait list. And yet there are those folks who are asking the city to be put on as a point or 2 or 55 or whatever it takes to get heard.
Yeah.
Because they are very poor or extremely low or acutely. And yes, it does make decisions. The city decided many years ago they wanted to prioritize Cupertino residents, workers, and whatever the third one is. Okay, and so what that means is if you're not in those groups but you're still needing below market rate housing, you don't get extra points. And so you're at 0, whatever that.
Yes.
So your point is well taken, but it's not solved by not making a priority for people who are actively being displaced at this time versus people who, I thought that you said it very well.
So funny you say-
Where people are doing their own, right now they're doing okay. They'd like to get into this list, but not like these guys that are like, and now you're out and your rent is going this way.
And they can't.
So funny you say you
So
voted
I-
for
that's-
1A and.
So anyway, so I didn't mean to discuss it exactly. I wanted to give you what you wanted, which is I would go for
See. Both.
option, the one that's for both. Is that
C.
option 3?
That's
C.
option 3.
C. Okay, so that's what I mean.
No, number option 3.
Option 3.
Thank you, sorry, option 3.
Option.
3 equals C.
Yeah,
It's late, huh?
Shane is next.
Okay,
Okay,
Vice Chair goes in.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then,
Good to see you. Good to see
fine.
Thank you for,
Oh, thank you all for coming.
Thank you for attending.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yeah. Have a good one.
I'm in agreement with Chair Cunningham, option 3.
Option 3.
I'm also in agreement with option 3, but there are a couple of notes that I want to add,
Okay.
is that, so I would say try to make the developers pay because it seems like it wouldn't deter like future developers from joining. And if like lawsuits happen, like we come and deal with it, worst case scenario, we will back it up with cities found, and I would rather city to back it up than not back it up. Besides that, I would want to talk about this point again about the security deposit. So I want to amend that, whatever option we choose, I hope we can add the security deposit in there that, the landlord should give a list, even if it's below 125, because that could mean a lot to them. And another idea I just came up with was that if like by any chance, their security deposit takes a hit, let's say, because I know like landlord, they charge for like carpet, charge for like paint, like if you put like a stick on the wall and paint like rip off a little bit, they charge for that. So in case something happens, and this is just throwing it out there, is it possible for the city to like reimburse up to like however small dollar amount? That's going with a security deposit, like the reimbursement and stuff. It doesn't have to be big, but just want to make sure that if they are like moving out to some other place, they don't have to take a hit of that. So yeah, so that's my additional point. Besides that, my overall opinion is also option 3.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And
My choice is option 3, but I want it retroactive. I don't want it because it's built into the current housing element, I just don't want the 140 elements to be dropped off.
Yes.
okay.
Option.
Good one.
My option was that I forgot what it's 1B or 2B, but there was an option that whoever new developer is coming in, you are negotiating with them about something. Yeah, so that's 1B.
Okay.
1B, and there was another option where you are saying that the developer, or sorry, the owner will help with the 2 months or 3 months. I think that was option 2. I mean, these two options are great options, but my only comment is that we just need to make sure the city attorney that they will hold up.
Okay.
But these are.
Alright. Okay, so knowing this, it sounds like we have a decision that we're essentially in favor of both.
Yeah.
All around, with one in favor of 1B in terms of the anti-displacement priority, which is, instead of doing, like a citywide priority list, just to work it into conditions of approval, right? So we're gonna take a vote right now on a motion to approve option 3, since that is the majority. But of course, we are taking into account notes on everything, and it will all be incorporated into what gets drafted. So thank you for sharing. Yeah,
I'll be in touch with you. I'm off starting now.
yes,
I'll be back, but I'll get in touch. Let's communicate on ESG.
you got my email, yes.
I know, I did.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'll be leaving
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you so much for having me.
Your jacket.
Your jacket, somebody's jacket?
So Jeff, your motion on to recommend approval of option
So
I did hear a motion. Yes. Second.
goals
Okay.
AD.
And so can you read out what we just said we're gonna vote on?
Absolutely. The commission has motioned to recommend approval of option 3,
Oh, okay.
both of the displacement priority
Okay.
policy. We're going to take roll now.
Okay.
When I call your name, please say aye, nay, or abstain. Chair Cunningham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Golden, Commissioner Heath,
Aye.
Commissioner Tatachari, Commissioner Doss.
I will say I, because the point is that if I say no to 3, that means I say no to both 1 and 2, but I do say yes to 2, so I go with that.
The motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a great discussion and we have, oh. That.
Feels good.
Did
That
it.
is good. Yeah. It was a good discussion.
But we have the commission report.
I know, that's the thing. We are at 7:28 or something here.
Oh, sorry.
And so we did that, blah, blah. Staff and commission reports are next. There was no mayor's meeting, so there's nothing to report back from that. Other commissioners, it sounds like we had one commissioner that wanted to speak, and I don't know if there are others, but,
So.
yeah, Commissioner Key, you had something that you.
Oh, no, it's just us.
Commission report. Yeah,
Yeah, so I want to continue on the issue of security deposits, and I just want to bring something to light. So recently, my friend left his apartment in Mountain View, and even though it's in Mountain View, I think it still applies to all of us here. So he got he got like a lot of things deducted from his security deposit, and on top of that, it says non-negotiable. So I don't think that's how it should be, and I don't think that's like lawful or whatever to do that, but I do think that my guess is that the property owner put it there to scare people off. So that, because tenants should have a right to talk to the property owner about, give me a list of things that you deduct from. And, my friend also did a pre-inspection. And during those times, the landlord wasn't really clear, and it's a big property, property management. So the property management didn't give a clear answer about, what needs to be charged. The property owner just, gave like some rough points about, this thing's not clean, whatever. And now this bill, some parts of it is a little bit of a surprise. So I'm reporting this, especially, I just want to show everyone that this is non-negotiable. When you are not someone in the housing commission, when you don't have a lot of resources, when you don't know better, and you see this non-negotiable, you might think, it might be hard to like talk to them and get my money back. Maybe I'll just take a hit. And I don't think this is nice, and this should be something that's encouraged the county. I can also I will also talk about this in the future agenda setting if like no other commission reports are there.
Okay, well, let's see if there's other commissioners that have something that they wanted to report out on.
No, can you respond to what she said?
It's not really a response.
I have a point.
It's not really, it's really not a discussion item.
It's not a response, it's just what I have we have gone through, so.
Excuse me? I understand.
Okay,
You would like
no
to say
problem.
something. I do understand that. However, it's not a discussion item. And so
No,
if there are other
problem, no.
commissioners who have attended another meeting that they would like to report out on, that is what you can do. Absolutely. And I don't know if you have attended something that you would like to report on. And so I have not reported, me either. And so we get to staff reports. And I don't know if you have any further staff reports for tonight. And if not, we could move on to future agenda setting.
Not for tonight, I just wanted to say, to introduce you guys who came a little later, this is Lindsay. She'll be here to help assist with these meetings going forward. New with the city, so.
Yeah.
Wait,
This is Lindsay, she's new with the city and she'll be here
You
to,
said Lindsay. right?
Lindsay.
Yeah.
Lindsay, like
Yeah.
L-I-N-D.
No, but I understand. Nice to meet you, Lindsay. See you leave?
No, sorry, not leaving. She's here to help assist with these meetings going forward. Just, as you can tell, there's a lot to take notes on and, so yeah, she'll be here to help me to make sure we've got accurate records of these meetings.
Very good. Excellent.
Oh, I had a report on you say, so I think in the first page you showed a schedule, so we are having something in the first week of January or?
No,
No, right?
March will be our first
Yeah.
meeting.
Oh, after this March?
Yeah.
Okay, the
Yeah,
reason I'm
after
asking,
tonight, March will be our first.
the reason I'm asking is because I think my term and Bobin's term are probably getting over in January. So
Unless you're applying. for
unless I'm
another
applying, unless I get again, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah.
Oh.
But that's how that works.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Well, yes, that's been a pleasure. If you're not planning to.
Oh, yes.
If you're not
Yeah.
planning to fly, I don't know.
I will,
So,
it's really nice working.
but we have, and also you, it has been nice working. Yeah, it has been nice working with you as well. Okay, very good. So that's the end of staff reports then.
That is.
And so we're moving on to future agenda setting, and we have a few more minutes, and so. We did hear one person want to speak about future agenda setting, and
Yeah.
so we can take that.
So I would just say like maybe do a study session or some of a sort that just look into tenants protection especially when it comes to like security. See, those things like non-negotiable, like come on. Just in general, look into things like that and then see what we can do for them because I talked to some of friends living in Mountain View. That seems like Mountain View has a better protection, service and laws, and they even have a dedicated rental commission. So
A what commission?
a rental house commission, renters commission. So, maybe just, the city look into things like that.
Thank you for reporting back.
Yeah.
Are there anybody else?
I
who
have
to
a-
have an adjourned?
Future agenda thing. So I remember in the last meeting, we talked about the state giving money and soliciting applications. And the deadline was something in November,
Oh,
or was it in January? I forgot. You remember that $3 million for purchasing and building
You mean the NOFA?
low income housing,
uh-huh.
and then 56,000 or something that we had in the last meeting. So what I'm asking you is that did you receive enough application by the deadline, or is the deadline still not?
Oh,
that's
so,
in the
so
future.
the NOFA that we
Yeah.
talked about in the last meeting for the city BMR fund and the CDBG fund as well.
Right.
That's still open right now. So we are still getting,
Oh, the deadline is in.
Still February.
February, the February 4th, I think is the deadline. By law, I'm actually not allowed to look at any applications until then, because it's gotta be, like, what's it, like, it's gotta be like a one-time thing, like where they're all open at once and I can review them all at once. So we will reconvene on that in March.
March, right?
Yep, that's
Okay,
right.
so that is my request for the agenda, like at least show us something
Sure.
where
Yeah,
what you got and things like that.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We have now ended up with the
What was the
future
gap?
agenda setting, and so I think.
Happy holidays, everybody.